So here we are back in Romans, and today we're going to be looking at Romans 1, 19 and 20. Paul has just finished the introduction, and he's now into this first section of the book, section about sin. Let me turn my screen over so you can see these verses. I pray you have your own Bible open. Perhaps you even have a journal open and you're making some notes or things that you want to remember in your prayer time from these verses. Paul's going to give us a couple of explanations here. He's going to, as he develops the letter, Paul is really methodical. He's kind of like a lawyer. He's giving a statement, then reasons, then reasons, then reasons, another statement, reasons and reasons and reasons. So that's what we see here. Paul has made a statement back in verse 17 that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all the ungodliness and unrighteousness of people who suppress the truth. So he's going to ask this question here. The because is he's giving us an explanation for the reason he says they know the truth and they suppress it. It's as if he's anticipating the question. Well, why do you say that, Paul? Why are you saying that they know the truth and suppress it? How do they know this? And he goes on, says, because that which is known about God is evident within them, for God has made it evident to them. So let's just keep this, stay here for a second, that he's made it evident within them. Some translations or some manuscripts say not just within or among them. Is evident among them. So they know the truth. They have perhaps an internal sense of the truth, as well as among themselves they know the truth. They can't escape it. That which may be known about God is evident, for God has made it evident to them. This is a God action. God has revealed himself, Paul says, to all men. In graciousness and mercy, he makes himself known to all men. You know, elsewhere in the Bible, in Ephesians chapter 2, Paul says that men are dead in sin, but here he says men know him, even fallen men. Are these things contradicting each other? Is Paul contradicting himself when he writes to the Romans and then the Ephesians? I don't think so. I think what's going on here is that, well, let me take first where Paul says men are dead in sins. If you look at that in Ephesians 2, 8, 9, and 10, if you look at that verse, you'll see it's in the context of responding to the gospel. Paul is making the point that men without God are unable to respond to the gospel in saving faith. They can't do that. They are like dead men to that extent. We don't want to push that analogy too far, but what he is saying here is they can't respond to the gospel. Here, Paul is not saying that they can't respond to the gospel. That's not his point. But he's saying something very similar here. He says that they know God. God has made sure they know, but they respond by suppressing the truth. That is, they don't respond in saving faith. That's just what Paul was saying in Ephesians. But what they do is they respond by suppressing the truth. That's Paul's point here. Paul's point here is that they know, God has made sure they know, and the way they respond to that is by suppressing the truth. Verse 20 is another answer to an anticipated question, I think. Paul says, up here he says, because, here he says, for. It's explanatory. He's explaining, Paul, how has God made this evident to them? How has God made it evident to the unbeliever that he exists? Well, Paul says, since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly perceived, being understood by what has been made. So what Paul is saying here is that the evidence they have is in nature all around them. That nature cries out exclaiming God that he exists. I think it's Psalm 18 or 19. I'm going from my memory here, but it celebrates how God speaks in the darkness of the starry night. He speaks in the brightness of the day. You know, I live in a beautiful place. I live in Estes Park, Colorado, right outside Rocky Mountain National Park. At night, and a clear night, you can see the Milky Way strewn across the sky. You see numerous stars. During the day, the sky is a color of blue that I don't see anywhere else in the country. I would say anywhere else in the world. These are all evidences of God. As I look around and see all the mountains, evidences of God. The evidence of God, of creation, is enough, Paul's saying here, to leave them without excuse. Not enough to save them, but enough to condemn them, enough to leave them without excuse. Again, it's not that they, Paul's point here is that they know, but they suppress. They don't have the power, they don't know, they don't have the power of the gospel has not been extended to them to believe, but only to suppress. So that's what they do in their unrighteousness, in their fallen state. They are suppressing the truth. Couple applications here, I think, for us as we meditate on these verses and think about them. Number one, there are no atheists. I know people advertise themselves as atheists. They claim to be atheists, but I think in a lot of ways, atheists think more about God than sometimes Christians do. Because what is known about God is evident to them, and they are fighting against it. They are working hard to keep that beach ball submerged under the water so the truth doesn't pop out and condemn them. There are no atheists. When you're talking to someone who professes to be an atheist, just ask them about creation. Did all this come from nothing? Are you saying it always was, that it had no beginning? Well, there's only one thing in the universe that has no beginning. You can agree with them to that extent. There is something that has no beginning, but it's not the planets, it's not the stars, it's not the earth, it's God. And they have to come to realize that at some point, either in this life or in the next. So that's something to keep in mind. Really, there are no atheists. There are just people who are fighting against God. The other thing that I would suggest as an application, something for you to think about, is how gracious and really glorious and merciful God is to surround us every day with evidences of his presence. And only believers, only you and I, brothers and sisters, could really benefit and enjoy that. And I suggest to you that the more we know God, the more we understand his character, the more that we can enjoy the world that he's put us in. I know it's a difficult place. I know there's a lot of reasons to lament. I know there's a lot of reasons to be afraid and to see God's wrath, and there's no doubt God's wrath is being poured out. But at the same time, we are surrounded by a world that is really God-saturated, a God-saturated world that's evident all around us. I have mentioned before in other studies I've taught that as I've taught through and studied the attributes of God, as I've looked at what's called his incommunicable and communicable attributes, I've grown not only to love God more as I know him more, but also to appreciate what he's done in the world around us, even in a fallen world. So I'd encourage you, take a breather during the day. I know we're all so busy. I know we all have so much to do, but perhaps take a breather sometimes during the day, a time out, and think about God's grace and what he's showing of himself to you by the world around you. what he's reminding you. You know, even sin can be a reminder of us to us of salvation and grace. So God bless you. Think about these things. Maybe make some notes in your journal of the things in the world that remind you of God, and enjoy those. Soak in that for a little bit today and enjoy God and his presence in your life. God bless you.